The first lunch period had just ended. I was walking with my friends, Sarah and Mike, across the main quad toward the science building for our fourth period chemistry class. The sun was out, the kind of bright October day that fools you into thinking summer is not really over. The atmosphere was loud and bustling with students changing classes. Suddenly, a police cruiser, its siren blaring, sped onto the school grounds and screeched to a halt near the administration building. A few seconds later, a second cruiser followed, then a third. Students stopped talking and started staring. Then a voice came over the outdoor speaker system, a voice I did not recognize. It was not a teacher or administrator. The voice sounded gravelly and agitated. It yelled at everyone to stop moving, to get inside, and to find cover now. Sarah grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the nearest building. We did not wait to hear more. We ran into the science lab, which was thankfully empty. The teacher, Mr. Harrison, was already there, locking the main door and drawing the thick blinds over the windows. He did not say a word, his face pale and serious. He motioned for us to hide under the long, heavy lab tables. We complied immediately. The lockdown announcement finally came on the school's official system, confirming a dangerous person was on campus and that we should remain silent. Through a small gap in the blinds, I could see the football field. The police officers were running across the turf, their sidearms drawn, moving toward the far end of the field near the woods. A police helicopter appeared overhead, circling low and loud. Then I saw him. A man in a dark hoodie and tattered jeans was sprinting across the goal line, heading for the fence. He was carrying something dark and bulky under one arm. Two officers tackled him just as he reached the chain link. A brief, violent struggle ensued. The helicopter was so loud the sound vibrated the windows. Mr. Harrison kept us under the tables for nearly 45 minutes after the man was subdued. The police cleared the area, and the principal gave the all-clear over the intercom. Apparently, the man was a convicted felon who had escaped from a transport vehicle on the highway adjacent to the school. He had run across the highway and onto school grounds, cutting through the football field to hide in the woods. The bulky object he carried was a duffel bag filled with some clothes and papers. The disturbing part was a knife found in his waistband. The police praised the school for its quick response. We resumed our classes, but a strange, unsettling energy remained in the school for the rest of the day. I was a new intern in the school maintenance department over the summer break. Most of the teaching staff was gone. My job involved inventorying old equipment in the dusty, labyrinthine subbasement beneath the school gym. This area was a maze of pipes, old storage rooms, and the massive, noisy boiler room. My two supervisors, Frank and Jesse, were upstairs moving some heavy machinery. I was down in the dark, checking off old power tools when I got a cryptic text from Frank. Lockdown. Stay put. Do not open the door. Armed man on premises. I dropped my clipboard. The subbasement had one main entrance, a heavy steel fire door that led to the gym lobby. Did not have a proper lock, only a simple swinging latch. I quickly went to the main light panel and threw the breaker, plunging the entire area into pitch blackness. The air became instantly heavy and silent, except for the low, constant hiss and rumble of the large central boiler. I moved into a deep alcove behind a huge stack of rusted shelving units. I kept my phone on silent, waiting. I had no idea what was happening upstairs. After about 15 minutes, I heard the distinctive sound of the steel fire door rattling. The latch was loud. Then the door opened with a slow, heavy creak. Footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, slow and deliberate. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the floor and walls. The person was moving toward the boiler room, which was on the other side of my hiding spot. I could hear the person breathing heavily. I pressed my back against the cold wall. The footsteps stopped right next to my alcove. The beam of light briefly illuminated the edge of my hiding spot. I thought, this is it. A man's voice, rough and low, spoke. I know you are down here. Come out now. The police are looking for you, Frank. The voice was Jesse. I felt a confusing mix of relief and terror. Then I heard Frank's voice coming from the top of the stairs. Jesse, what the hell are you doing? Jesse did stay put. Jesse did not respond. He simply said, Frank, they know. Give yourself up. I was hiding a few feet from a massive, tense confrontation. The police then poured through the door. I heard shouting, A loud thud, and the clatter of metal dropping. Soon the commotion was over. I came out of my hiding place, shaken. Frank and Jesse were gone. The young police officer told me Frank was the one armed and dangerous. He was a disgruntled former employee who had come back to attack Jesse, his former boss. Jesse had led the police to the basement after Frank had texted him, believing he had lured Frank into the perfect ambush. Jesse, still shaken, later told me he felt sick about the betrayal, but his quick thinking saved his life. I still have nightmares about the cold darkness of that basement. The high school always felt huge and empty at night. I worked the late shift in IT support, mostly monitoring the network and running backups from the main server room, which was deep in the oldest part of the building. It was a single windowless room across from the boiler room, secured by a heavy steel door with a keypad lock. Around midnight, the fire alarm system suddenly failed, triggering a code yellow alert that required an immediate building sweep. I got a call from the head of maintenance, Mr. Peterson. He sounded annoyed, telling me to secure my area, since they were sending security to check the building, starting on the 3rd floor. I finished my work and was about to leave when the school's emergency PA system crackled to life. It was a new, automated voice, not the usual administrator. The synthesized voice declared an immediate code red lockdown and warned of an intruder with a weapon. I immediately slammed the steel door shut and entered the 4-digit code to lock it. I turned off the server lights, plunging the room into absolute darkness, save for the faint green glow of the server status lights. The silence felt heavy. 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps outside my door. They were slow, deliberate, and dragging. They stopped right outside the server room. The keypad on the door suddenly beeped 3 times, indicating someone was trying to enter a code. I froze. I knew only a handful of people had the code. The lock gave a terrible groan as the person tried to physically force the door open. The thick metal held. Then, a low, rasping voice came through the door. "I know you are in there, Tommy. My name is not Tommy. Do you have the spare key for the back gate? Give it to me now." I did not move or breathe. The voice started to talk to itself, a stream of non sequiturs and threats. It continued trying to pry the door, making the heavy metal shudder. This went on for another 5 minutes. Finally, the person seemed to give up. The dragging footsteps moved away down the long corridor. I stayed in the dark for an hour until Mr. Peterson called my cell phone. He explained the intruder was an elderly, mentally ill man who believed he was an old groundskeeper. He had a large, sharpened garden tool and was caught trying to exit the back fence. I did not tell Peterson that the man knew my real name, not Tommy. It was late afternoon rehearsal for the school play, Our Town. We were in the auditorium, a massive, cavernous space that felt warm and dusty. There were about 20 of us on stage, or in the orchestra pit. I was working the lights in the booth high up in the back. Suddenly, the entire school system went into a hard lockdown. The emergency lights came on, casting an unsettling red glow over the empty seats. The announcement from the principal was curt and urgent. Intruder, possible weapon. Barricade, and remain silent. The theater director, Ms. Schmidt, yelled for everyone to get off the stage. She grabbed a heavy metal trunk used for costumes and jammed it against the backstage exit door. She quickly ushered everyone into the small, dark, soundproof storage room near the stage entrance. It was cramped, hot, and full of props. I stayed in the light booth, reasoning I could lock the heavy door to the booth and be out of sight. I watched through the small window. The air hung still for a long time. Then, a single set of footsteps entered the main aisle of the auditorium. They were slow and loud against the marble floor. I could not see the person. The footsteps stopped in the center aisle. Then a voice spoke, low but projecting clearly throughout the large, empty room. "I know the drama club meets on Tuesdays. I hear you breathing in that little room." Silence. "Now then." The voice sang a line from the play, a little stretch and a little give, and "We'll enjoy living." A few of the students in the storage room gasped. The voice started to laugh, a dry, unsettling sound. The person then walked up the small steps and onto the main stage. They began to drag a heavy prop chair across the wooden floor, making a horrible grating noise. They dragged it right to the door of the storage room. They sat down. The laughter stopped. The absolute silence that followed was worse than the noise. After what felt like an eternity, the voice said, "I'll wait." The police arrived about 30 minutes later, sirens blaring. We heard the confrontation, a brief scuffle, and then the all clear. The man was a former student with a history of stalking the theater program, obsessed with the lead actress. He carried a heavy-duty box cutter, but did not use it. The props chair was left sitting right outside the storage door. The director later told us the man was also the person responsible for 2 years of unsettling notes left in the dressing room mirrors. I was in woodshop class during 5th period, using the massive sander. The sound of the machinery was deafening. The only way I knew something was wrong was when Mr. Davies, the shop teacher, frantically threw the main power switch. The room went silent and dark. He yelled a single word: "Lockdown." He ran to the main double doors, threw the heavy metal bar across them, and then quickly moved to the back, pushing us all into the small, crowded tool crib. The teacher's aide, a big man named Rick, jammed a rolling workbench against the inside of the tool crib door. We were now completely isolated. Mr. Davies whispered that there was a situation in the gym wing, and a suspect was loose. He had us all sit on the floor and cover our mouths. We heard muffled shouting from the main hallway. The shouting stopped right outside the woodshop. Then a rapid, insistent banging started on the woodshop door. It was heavy, determined. A man's voice, distorted and angry, yelled, "Open the shop! I need to hide!" The banging continued. Mr. Davies gripped a heavy steel bar he had pulled from the rack. The lock held, but the door rattled violently. Suddenly, the banging stopped. Everything was quiet for about 5 seconds. Then, we heard a small side door open near the back of the shop, the one that led into the janitor's closet. The sound was unmistakable. The man was in the room. We all held our breath. We heard slow, measured footsteps moving across the main woodshop floor, getting closer to our hiding spot. The footsteps stopped right outside the tool crib. Deep breath followed. The person was standing maybe 3 feet from us. The man then started humming a simple childish tune. He hummed it for nearly a full minute right outside our door, and he simply walked away. We heard the main woodshop door bang open as he left. After the all clear, Mr. Davies found a large, greasy butcher knife left on the workbench. The police later explained the man was a recent prison escapee who had hidden in the janitor cart and then tried to find a place to change clothes. He was caught trying to steal a maintenance truck outside. It was a normal, frustrating afternoon in advanced chemistry. We were supposed to be mixing some relatively harmless compounds, but the experiment was failing. Our teacher, Mrs. Albright, was trying to fix a faulty burner. Suddenly, the school's alarm system blared an urgent lockdown order. The message was cut short, but the panic in the air was immediate. Mrs. Albright pulled the fire alarm handle, not to signal a fire, but to trigger the air filtration system to shut down. She frantically told us to get under the heavy central lab tables, which had thick granite tops. She locked the 2 classroom doors and threw a large, heavy beaker cabinet against one of them. The room was mostly glass walls, making us feel exposed. We had only been under the tables for about 2 minutes when we heard the sound of breaking glass from the hallway outside. It was a loud, single crash. Then, a strong, sweet smell started to seep in through the door and ventilation gaps. It was acrid and unsettling. Someone near me started coughing. Mrs. Albright immediately recognized the smell. "It's a tear gas compound." "Stay low and cover your faces with your shirts," she ordered. She knew the chemical composition of almost everything. The air became thick, making our eyes water and throats burn. We heard running footsteps. Man was sprinting down the hall, yelling obscenities. He stopped right at our door and started pounding. He was breathing heavily, his voice strained. "Open this door, I cannot breathe. You all did this to me." He was blaming us for the gas he had apparently thrown down the hallway. He pounded the door for a full minute, shaking the cabinet we had pushed against it. He finally ran off, gagging. We stayed under the tables for another 20 minutes, our eyes streaming tears. When the police finally gave the all clear, they explained the man was an angry parent who had been banned from the school. He had thrown a homemade stink bomb that contained some minor irritants, thinking it would create a distraction. The tear gas smell was a byproduct of the mixture reacting with the air and the hall cleaning chemicals. They found him on the main lawn, red-faced and coughing. The incident left us all with headaches and a deep sense of vulnerability. Our biology class was just returning from a long, tiring field trip to the local university observatory. We were all sitting in the school bus, parked in the main turnaround, waiting for the driver to finish his paperwork. It was mid-morning. Suddenly, a police car pulled right in front of the bus, blocking our exit. 2 armed officers jumped out and immediately ran inside the school building. The bus driver, an older gentleman named Mr. Harold, received a panicked call on his radio. He immediately ordered the bus into a lockdown. He closed and locked the main door and drew the thick window curtains. He told us there was an active situation and we needed to stay down below the window line. He instructed us to remain absolutely silent. We all huddled in the narrow aisle, trying to remain calm. Minutes passed. Then, someone started rattling the emergency exit door in the back of the bus. It was a loud, desperate sound. Mr. Harold gripped his small flashlight and moved to the back. A man on the outside was pulling hard on the handle, trying to force the door open. He yelled in a muffled voice, "Let me in. They are after me. I need a ride." Mr. Harold whispered, "Go away. We are locked down." The man started kicking the door, shaking the entire bus chassis. The man was getting increasingly agitated. He then ran to the side of the bus and started hitting the windows, making sickening thuds against the thick safety glass. He was moving from window to window, trying to find a weak spot. Every strike made us flinch. The banging stopped as quickly as it started. We heard a loud command, a brief struggle, and the sound of handcuffs clicking shut. The police later told Mr. Harold the man was a local thief fleeing a nearby jewelry store robbery. He thought the school bus was a quick escape route. He was unarmed but desperate. We were stuck on the bus for another hour as the police processed the scene. No one spoke for the entire ride home. I was working a summer job in the school basement, sorting through old records in the dark, dusty archives room. It was a massive room full of metal shelving units. My supervisor, Mr. Graves, was upstairs. My phone suddenly rang. It was Mr. Graves. He whispered, "Lockdown." Gunmen spotted near the front office. "Stay in the back and do not make a sound." He hung up before I could ask a question. I turned off the single bare light bulb. The room became silent and black. The only sound was the distant, rhythmic thump of the large water pump in the adjacent boiler room. I hid between 2 tall stacks of shelves filled with old yearbooks. The metal was cold against my cheek. After about 5 minutes, the heavy metal door to the basement opened with a loud screech. Footsteps started coming down the stairs, slow and heavy. The person was not trying to be quiet. They walked directly to the main boiler room and stopped inside. The rhythmic thump of the pump suddenly stopped. The silence was absolute. I heard a click, and then a strange electronic noise started up, a loud high-pitched whine. The whine got louder and louder, filling the entire basement. I felt a painful pressure building in my head. I covered my ears, but the sound seemed to penetrate my skull. The person was doing something in the boiler room. The whine was followed by a loud single thwack of metal hitting metal. Then, the electronic whining stopped. The footsteps moved out of the boiler room and started to walk toward the archives. I thought I was dead. The footsteps stopped right outside the archives door, and the person laughed, a short, sharp sound. Then, the person turned and walked back upstairs. The door closed. I waited for an eternity before Mr. Graves came down with 2 police officers. The intruder was a former maintenance worker who had snuck in to disable the water pump, causing a small explosion. He wanted revenge for being fired. The electronic noise was a faulty wire he had exposed. I was sitting in the school counseling office, waiting for my appointment. The room was small and quiet, carpeted in thick, dark blue. The counselor, Ms. Jenkins, was checking her schedule. The school intercom suddenly blared a message. Immediate code red lockdown. All personnel hide. Do not approach the doors. The message repeated and then cut off. Ms. Jenkins moved quickly. She pushed a filing cabinet against the door and turned off the lights. She motioned for me to get under the large, heavy desk. We huddled together, the air thick with tension. The silence returned, complete and oppressive. We waited. After a long pause, we heard a noise that made us both jump. It was a scuttling sound coming from above the drop-ceiling tiles. The noise was directly above us. It sounded like something large was crawling through the space between the roof and the ceiling. The scuttling moved slowly, dragging something heavy. The sound stopped directly over the center of the office. Then a single water-stained ceiling tile began to sag. A tiny crack appeared in the plaster. A few seconds later, a small dark object poked through the crack. It was the tip of a large knife blade. The blade slowly started to widen the crack. Miss Jenkins silently pointed to a heavy, antique letter opener on her desk. I snatched it. The knife blade disappeared. The scuttling resumed, moving away from our office toward the main hallway. The sound eventually faded into the distance. We stayed under the desk for another 20 minutes until the dean came to the door. He explained that a homeless man had climbed onto the roof of the single-story wing. He had been trying to find a way inside. He was not armed, but he had a large tool belt. When the dean later checked the ceiling, he found a section of the tile cut, a used knife left lying on the insulation. The sight of that small cut over our heads was a horrifying reminder of how close we came to danger.